Okay, guys, we're going to start chapter 15. This will probably be our last section that would be on the AP exam. I am going to post a video later this week explaining a lot more details about the AP exam. I'm doing some more research on how they're going to do things. But chapter 15 deals with personality. Personality refers to the pattern of behavior, like meaning how you act, thoughts, like what you think about, and characteristics, like how you would describe a person an individual possesses and displays consistently that differentiates one person from another. So if you were to think about somebody who is academically driven versus somebody who is more mechanically driven, who likes to work with their hands, that would be the difference in their personality. That would be an example of their behavior. Some people like to be hands-on, some people like to be book smart. Some people like to have characteristics of, hey, I have this type of work ethic when it comes to, working outside and working with my hands. When it comes to books, I just am not driven that way. And that's what we're kind of talking about when we talk about personality. Now, you could actually be a personality psychologist, and they attempt to identify personality characteristics similar among people. They try to figure out why are people close to each other, why are people similar, and devise principles to explain particular motives. What motivates a person who's more book-driven versus somebody who is more, working with their hands, somebody who's more mechanical or like to deal with electrical stuff or carpentry. What changes these people's personality? Like what makes them similar? What makes them different? And so a personality psychologist would attempt to understand those individuals. The study of personality involves how characteristics develop, meaning how in the world do you develop a personality? Like where does it come from? And the relative influences of genetics, meaning how, if a parent is super, super hyper, both parents are super hyper, super extroverted, super outgoing, then does that deal with the kid's personality? The parents are laid back, just kind of more relaxing. Do the kids act that way? Does biology play a part in it? Their cognition, how they understand things, their personal life experiences, how does that form their personality? And then culture themselves, do Americans act a certain way versus people from England, versus people from Mexico, versus people from China? Does culture have an impact on your personality? So personality covers a lot of different things. When you think about your own personality, you think about like how many people or what people you're similar to, what people you're different than. You think about like Facebook. Facebook has a lot of different personalities. You have friends on Facebook that are very politically driven. Actually, you know what? Facebook's a bad example because you guys don't use Facebook. So let's say Instagram. But you guys have friends that post stuff about trucks, and you have friends that post stuff about vacations and food and whatever. But even then, personalities are just so different when it comes to you guys, and that's what makes you you. So let's first talk about the psychoanalytic theory of personality. This is where things get a little bit weird. I told you we were going to be talking about Sigmund Freud and how he's a little bit goofy. This is where this kind of comes into play. This is developed by Sigmund Freud, and he believed that an individual's personality is the result of unresolved, meaning it's not able to be solved, unconscious conflicts from childhood or unconscious sexual and aggressive instincts. Now, a lot of his viewpoints and his beliefs were basically founded during a time period when people didn't really talk openly about sex and people didn't really talk about aggressive behavior. You have to understand that basically he was born in the middle 1850s, I believe, and he died right around World War II, I think 1940 or something like that. So a lot of his stuff that he did was kind of taboo during that time. People didn't talk about it. And so that's why he felt like perhaps that's why people were having issues. And this is the psychoanalytic part of things. Psychoanalytic. Make sure you associate him with psychoanalytic. And he said that the mind, which includes your personality, is divided into 3 levels. The first level is the unconscious. The unconscious is the level of mind that contains hidden thoughts, wishes, memories, and feelings that an individual cannot bring into conscious awareness. If you remember, he talks a lot about the iceberg. And if you remember, we talked about how he said that the mind is like an iceberg. Think of this as the very, very bottom layer of the iceberg that you cannot access, you cannot see, and you cannot bring it into your permanent mind. And it's mainly filled with unacceptable sexual or aggressive thoughts, meaning sexual desires or aggressive behaviors like I want to kill this person. But it's located deep down inside, and you can't really ever find it. But somehow it motivates you, it drives your personality, and that's why we would call this the unconscious. And it could really result in personality difficulties for the individuals, especially because you think about this stuff, at least how he said it, it started back in childhood. And so, therefore, something like that happens and it stays in your mind, it stays in your personality, and it drives you, but you don't really know why it happens. The preconscious is the level of mind that contains information an individual is aware of but not currently thinking about. So, if I were to ask you guys, what did you have for dinner last night? Well, before I asked that question, you were not thinking about what you had for dinner last night. And some of you guys are thinking, I don't remember what I had for dinner last night. Or if I asked you, how many times have you been skiing in your life? Well, most of you are not thinking about skiing. Well, now you are, but that's the preconscious. It's hidden for the moment, but it's easily able to be brought to the surface quickly. And so, like I said, the example that you have is what you had for dinner last night. And so all of a sudden, the preconscious, it's accessible, but it's just not readily available. It might just take a minute or two. If I asked you, what is your favorite song of all time, or what is your favorite band, or what is your favorite sweatshirt, or whatever it could be, those are things that you're not currently thinking about, but can easily access if needed. And then you have your conscious. This is the part of the mind that is currently active and responsive to events and stimuli in the environment, similar to the tip of the iceberg that you see as far as what's going on around you, that type of thing. And so therefore, you guys are listening to my voice, you're listening to my lecture, you're thinking about the mind right now. That's the conscious part. It's you responding to it. So maybe you're sitting there and you're seeing a bag of chips on the left-hand side of your computer, and you're thinking, man, I really want some chips, or I want some water. Those are conscious things. Those are things that are easily able to come to mind. All right, so now let's talk about, that was the psychoanalytic theory of personality, where he kind of said this. Now let's talk about psychosexual development. And so in what he did is meaning he being Freud, said there are two biologically based instincts known as thanatos and eros. Not Thanos, that's the guy who snaps the finger, although I believe that they did take some of that from this. But he says that this influences people's behavior. And in his psychoanalytic theory, an individual's personality is shaped by instincts and needs in the unconscious. Again, so he's talking about the unconscious here. So thanatos is the Greek word for death, and it represents the dark side of human nature, including the aggressive urges and self-destructive behaviors. Might be like self-destructive, meaning like harmful, maybe possibly even suicide. But again, this is where I think like that comes into that idea of Thanos, is that he represents the dark side of human nature, and aggressive urges, wanting to kill things, wanting to be violent, and maybe not knowing why. And that's what he was saying it's driven by. Or he would say that you have the other side would be eros, which is the Greek word for love, and it represents the life instincts, the desire to live, including your basic survival needs, food, water, love, affection, self-preservation, and even your sexual drives. Hence the word eros, erotic. I'm sure you guys have heard enough passages and preachers talk about the different words for love, phileo, eros, and agape. Those are those ideas. But that's where they kind of come up with. And so if you notice, he's kind of got like the death, and he's got the love thing. Almost think of it, and we'll get into this in a little bit, as like, if you remember the old Looney Tunes cartoons, and they had like the devil on one side of Bugs Bunny and then the angel on the other side. That's kind of what he's talking about within this. And that's where he said your two biologically based instincts. Now within this, he said that all of the life instincts, especially the sexual drive and the energy associated with them, are simply referred to as the libido. And that's letter B. And what it is this is the thing that drives you. It's that life energy. It's the thing that pushes you. It's the thing that motivates you. Specifically, again, dealing with your sexual drive. Every once in a while, you'll see your people talk about, do you have a low libido? And in commercials that might talk about sexual desires or whatever. And so that could be part of that. Now, within each of these psychosexual development, he divided it up between different stages. And he talked about that these personality develops as an individual passes through a series of psychosexual stages during which the libido is focused on a different area of the body. And the 5 stages of the psychosexual personality development consists of the oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital stages. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on some of these as we get rolling. Now, again, a lot of this stuff is a little bit weird, but some of it can explain a little bit of behavior. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the first one. And we said that each person passed through a series of stages. And number 3, fixation is what happens when the needs associated with a particular stage of development are either over or underindulged, meaning they become fixated on a point, like they can't take their focus off of anything else. And if it's overindulged, it can cause a problem, meaning if they overdo it, if they overfocus on it, or if it's underindulged, they don't address it, it can result in an individual being stuck in that stage. Individuals who are fixated at a particular stage continue to search for gratification by engaging in activities associated with the stage that has an unresolved conflict. Meaning, if you get stuck in one of these stages, you can't conquer it. Through the rest of your life, you will struggle with this particular stage. Now, it might not be in the same way that you did when you were an infant, but it could develop into something as a teenager, as an adult. And so that's what he's doing. He's going to focus on all of these stages that deal with your psychosexual development. And so what we'll do is on our next video lecture, we will get started on these and we'll go through all 5 stages to kind of keep some continuity between all of these. And again, things get a little bit weird, and we'll continue on that on our next video. All right, that next video will probably be tomorrow, so you only have one video today. Have a good afternoon.